Why canyons around the world attract tourists so much? The answer to the question seems simple, as usually canyons, grottos, caves and depressions are quite picturesque. This is exactly where you can take an excellent picture and, as they now say, blow up the Instagram. About 4 million people come to see the Grand Canyon in Arizona every year, spending $1 billion on experiential tourism. Beauty is a great force, yet there is one more reason why land surface phenomena attract us so much. They make it possible to eyewitness the grandiose geological story of our planet Earth. Billions of years pressed into layers are exposed to anyone willing to enjoy them. In recent years, experiential travel has been actively gaining momentum in tourism. People don't want to just eat, drink and sunbathe on the beach. They are more eager to learn, make new discoveries and put to test their best adventure qualities. Buddhists say that by moving in space, travelers score points in their karma. Those who don't believe in the eternal samsara wheel can very well score points among their social network subscribers. The promotion of the Grand Canyon as a tourist brand has begun 100 years ago, but we still have to walk this path. We need to work hard to tell about our beautiful nature sites and attract millions of tourists from different parts of the world to our country and spend their money here. Indeed, it is a tough task, but the national tourist resources do allow fulfilling it. In the course of the last year, the permanent OutdoorKZ TV Expedition made a huge trip visiting different landscape and geographical zones across Kazakhstan. No doubt, each region is peculiar and unique, but some of the natural sites in the north and in the south, as well as in the west and the east of the country, are especially attractive and marvelous. We mean canyons and the so-called colored mountains. The pictures taken here turn out the most bright and saturated, although in this episode we will not talk about their beauty but their educational value. This is Almaty, the southern capital of Kazakhstan and the crossroads of the main logistics lines connecting southeastern Kazakhstan with international airline routes. The majority of tourists begin their journeys around Central Asia in Almaty airport.
Природный туризм можно условно разделить на две категории – специальный и массовый.
Conditionally, nature tourism can be divided into two types: special and mass. Special tourism includes complicated individual tours, ascensions, hunting and expeditions. They are more expensive but are rather time-consuming, thus limiting their number. Individual clients require special attention and a lot of time. During one season, it is possible to lead only several such groups. Mass tourism is all about 1 or 2 day excursions or hikes. They are cheaper but can engage many more people. Kazakhstan has a lot of picturesque places where tourists can be brought by full buses. The Charin Canyon, located 200 kilometers away from the southern capital, is the most famous in Kazakhstan. 800 million years ago, there were high mountains where Almaty stands now. Erosion had wiped them out almost without a trace. For hundreds of millions of years, the newly formed plains became home to seas. For example, in the Mesozoic age, most of Almaty region was occupied by the Jungarian and then the Ili seas, where the ancient Charin fell into. In the warm shelf gulfs, ichthyosauruses hunted, and ammonites, together with other marine invertebrates, worked on the creation of thick Cretaceous deposits without rest or sleep. Their remains raised the sea bottom by 1.5 kilometers. In some places, the geological layers are properly parallel, and in others, they are neither parallel nor symmetric, bending in such a fancy way that it seems that someone has turned them over. These are the traces of the mighty tectonic forces. Once upon a time, it was a rough place to be. In the beginning of the last century, German geographer Alfred Wegener put forward the theory of continental drift. He alleged that about 65 million years ago, the Hindustan Peninsula crashed into Eurasia, forming the Himalayas and the Tibetan Plateau. Initially, Wegener's theory seemed too improbable, but in the 60s of the last century, exploring underwater ridges, American geophysicists Morgan and Gorda discovered the role of horizontal tectonic plate movement in mountain making. Harder basalt oceanic plates crashing into granite continental plates slide under them, raising the Earth's surface in a wavy pattern. Magma from the mantle gets into the cracks in tectonic plates, thus amplifying the pressure. The huge power hidden in the subsoil lifts the granite plates, in places breaks them, and gives birth to highlands, depressions, and failures. Here and there it makes its way onto the surface, thus forming volcanoes. As the Sugatinskaya Valley was rising from the sea bottom, gradually turning into a plateau, the Charin River was cutting its way through it, forming the canyon. At present, we have the unique chance of seeing the illustration of this magnificent geological story with our own eyes. The OutdoorKZ team is trying to descend to the bed of the Charin River, but it's not that easy. The river has cut the canyon in the flat Sugatinskaya Valley with almost steep walls. You can try reaching the river following the streams, but they have overgrown with dense and prickly thickets. We need to find the hardly noticeable path of the mountain goats. It will make our descent much simpler. The old willow reminds of the Iowa happiness tree from the Avatar movie. James Cameron was trying to send to the audience the message that nature is a single living organism and the humans are only a part of it. In the Tugay thickets along the Charin, we come to the same conclusion. Sentries vigilantly protect the colony of grey gerbils. The very second a stranger appears, the guards make a disturbing whistle and everybody in the community hide in the holes. With the rise of the northern Tian Shan, the Charin sources got elevated, increasing the water flow angle. The rapid current accelerated the speed of erosion and the canyon grew deeper. These processes are still going on today. Our operator decided to float 100 meters down the river. Having skinned his knees on sharp stones, he personally experienced the erosive power of the Charin. We saw how soft water cuts through solid rock, and now we will see how easily wind blows off whole mountains. Green meadows and coniferous forests represent the typical landscape of the Transilea-Alatau northern macroslope. Sometimes traveling along the green valleys you suddenly encounter a rock different from the rest, both by color and structure. They are called residual outcrops or Inselbergs and remain after the destruction of the unstable surrounding rock. The process of rock products transferred to the lowered land surface sides is called denudation. It's been taking place since the beginning of times and will proceed until the Earth rotates. Erosion gradually destroys this rock. Spring rains take disintegration products down to rivers. The residue accumulates in the valleys. They grow higher while the mountains grow smaller, and in a million years it will once again turn into a plain. Yet we still have time to admire the gorgeous mountains. We are on the Aral Sea coast. About 40 years ago, this sea fell victim of an environmental drama. It simply dried out. Imagine the surprise of the researchers when at the bottom of the dried-up sea, they found traces of human settlements. That meant that it wasn't the first time that the sea dried up. The Aral Sea has a complicated biography. Once it was part of the huge Sarmatian Sea, had dried up and filled up more than once. The cyclic nature of water level fluctuations in the Aral Sea is a proved scientific fact, but it doesn't diminish the fault of reclamation experts who failed to calculate proper water withdrawal from the Sirdarya and Amudarya rivers. At present, this site of environmental disaster has turned into a popular tourist destination. We are on the Kazakhstan ridge. The locals consider the unusual sandstone remnants holy. Their red color points to the presence of iron oxides in the rock. How did these overturned icicles form? In fact, the same way as the ones we saw in the northern Tian Shan. Erosion had flattened the ridge top, sparing only the most solid rock elements. They are the only ones which are still resisting the invincible force of entropy. Another quite popular tourist attraction is located in southern Kazakhstan region about 100 kilometers from Shymkent. The Akhmetchet cave, which is basically a hole amidst an even plain. It is a karst cavity, or as they're also called, a solutional cave. For millennia, underground water carried away soluble particles, forming this huge deepening. Gypsum, marble, limestone, dolomite and other types of water-soluble rock are subject to karst leaching. When the underground cavity becomes too big, its ceiling can collapse, turning the cave into a depression. This is the Zhagargan depression on the Caspian Sea coast. From Turkic, Zhagargan translates as sank soil. Indeed, looking at it makes you think that a huge layer of crust simply fell into abyss. Ufologists allege that it was the ancient spaceship landing site, although conventional scientists have their own opinion regarding the place. Specifically, they believe that the cavity formed as a result of karst leaching under the dense calcareous shell of the Tubkaragan Plateau. Judging by vegetation and soil types at the hole's bottom, the 4-kilometer piece of the Tubkaragan plate collapsed quite recently, in the historical time. During the subsequent transgression of the Caspian Sea, the depression was flooded with water and the sea surf finished what the tectonic processes had started. Light sand and clay strata were washed away by the sea, leaving only heaps of failed rocks. We are relocating several tens of kilometers southwards to the Torish Valley, which is also called the Valley of Spheres. The hill's top is covered with ferro-manganese concretions of different diameters. The legend says that Alpamis battered through them at his enemies. Some of the balls are a little squeezed, others are ideally round. Science says that these spherical concretions formed inside the colloidal silt layer at the bottom of the ancient Sarmatian Sea. The positively charged core drew the negatively charged particles from the oozy suspension. The formation of each sphere took tens or even hundreds of thousands of years. In the foggy and distant past of the Earth's geological history, continents drifted. Oceans and seas changed their coastlines, mountains collapsed and turned into plains, and sea bottoms vice versa rose to the level of mountain summits. Thanks to all these processes, today we have the opportunity to admire the hardened spheres that emerged from the bottom of the ancient sea and ended up on the very top of the Aktau Ridge. Sedimentary rocks forming the Aktau Ridge and the Usturt Plateau began to accumulate over 140 million years ago in the bottom deposits of the primary Tethys Ocean. About 10 million years ago, the huge ancient ocean shrank to a splinter stretching from the Aral Sea to the Caucasus, which geologists now call the Sarmatian Sea. The Aktau Mountains were one of its islands. The Sarmatian Sea had receded quite recently, about 400,000 years ago, leaving behind its modern relics, the Caspian and the Aral Seas. The western chink or cliff of the Usturt Plateau. This rock located in the Irakti Valley of Kassals reminds of a golden dragon. Shallow salt lakes are called soars. One of them, Tuzbaye Soar, is a popular sight among auto tourists. You can see it turning off the Aktau-Baynau highway. Photographers are also crazy about Tuzbaye. The white limestone around and the smooth white lake surface, the scorching desert sun and the inexhaustible imagination of wind erosion gave birth to this tourist and photographic paradise. Tourists come here by SUVs, buses and even by bicycles.
Hi everyone, my name is Pierre Mousti. I come from France. I'm a cyclist. I'm cycling since 7 months now. I've been to Turkey, Georgia, Armenia, Iran, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and now I'm in Kazakhstan. I've made about 9,000 kilometers. So now I'm in western Kazakhstan. This region is just simply wonderful.
Pierre had recently graduated from the university where he studied sociology and decided to see the world with his own eyes. He's writing a book about his travel. We hope that when the book is published, it will pay off all the road burdens and deprivations he's facing now. Usturt cliffs are actually the steep coast of the ancient Sarmatian Sea. It becomes obvious when you find hidden remains of marine organisms at the tops of these hills. Several million years ago, different types of sharks lived here. These apparently are the teeth of Lamnanasus or mackerel shark. Plenty of remains of ammonites and sea hedgehogs around also. It doesn't surprise us that the bottom of the ancient sea is now 1 kilometer above the level of the modern Caspian Sea, as we are already familiar with the theory of tectonic plate movement. Experiential tourists like learning about the animals that had lived in Mangistau millions of years ago, but it doesn't hurt to see some living representatives of the local animal world either.
The
Usturt Mouflon or Trans-Caspian red sheep is a close relative of our argali, although represents a separate species due to the special shape and size of its horns. Argali has bigger horns of absolutely different shape, and in our country lives only in Mangistau region. The moment the expedition members got upset about not seeing a single Uriel, the universe decided to spare them a chance. This is a female with a lamb. Stone partridges or kekliks are an extremely flexible species. They can live both near glaciers and in rocky deserts. The only thing they need is to be close to rocks. Wandering around the camp with a small light, you can also get acquainted with the plateau's night inhabitants. It seems that the midday gerbil doesn't pay any attention to us. It allows our operator to come as close as 1 meter. Yet, the moment he crosses the invisible red line, the animal instantly moves back the same distance. In these spots, it's unacceptable to violate somebody's personal space without permission. It's not by accident that people call yellow scorpion the night hunter. Indeed, it's quite aggressive and can be dangerous for children. The scorpion's sting causes burning and swelling in adults, which usually go away in a day. However, there were registered cases when those stung by scorpions died of anaphylaxis, a specific allergy to poison causing lungs hyperstasis. Day heat makes Turkestan plate-tailed gecko hide in crevices and holes, but at nights it comes out to hunt. Each male has its individual hunting ground, which it vigilantly guards from competitors. Geckos feed on insects and arachnoids. At night, you can hear the typical gecko screaming. Baljan is sure that it's similar to the voice of Viserion from the Game of Thrones. If fantasy creators borrow the dragon's voice from gecko, then they apparently copied their appearance from steppe agama. When a male steppe agama sees a female or an enemy, its throat and extremities turn dark blue. Blue spots appear on its back and the tail turns bright yellow. In fact, lizards are the descendants of dragon-like dinosaurs. At one point in time, it became too difficult for large pangolins to find enough food in the changed environment, and they were forced to grow small, though preserving their carnivorous temper. In legends, dragons would help people. The agama likewise eats flying locusts. Sun watcher easily merges with desert landscape. In the hottest time, it digs itself in the sand and comes out only in twilight to hunt. In these spots, every hunter must remember that at any moment it can become prey. Fox, for example, does not mind feasting on lizards. Long-legged buzzards have an ideal family. The male and the female jointly feed their offspring in the nest that they build together on a rock ledge inaccessible for predators. 5 baby birds look forward to their parents returning home from hunting. So far, their relationship appears quite brotherly, but if food is insufficient, it will be taken by the strongest and the most aggressive of them. In fact, when it grows up and strong, it can even throw out its weak brothers and sisters out of the nest. Such behavior seems cruel to us, but if evolution has fixed this behavior stereotype, it means that it's beneficial for the overall population survival. In the world where everyone is simultaneously the hunter and the prey, only the strongest survive. From distance, Mount Shakala reminds a yurt, and inside it's a labyrinth of caves, passages and holes. We had a chance to go inside the cave, but we discarded the idea having no special speleological equipment. At present, there's no water on top of the mountain, although several hundreds of years ago, according to medieval sources, there were many springs and wells here. At the mountain top, a group of Turkmen had withstood a multiple-month siege by the Nogai troops. It once again confirms the assumption by scientists that earlier the climate on the Mangostau Peninsula was softer and damper. Mount Bozhira is considered the Ustyots hallmark. Geologists forged a special new term, chink, for the table rock Ustyot Plateau. It stands for steep, cliff-like slopes. Looking at this plain rocky desert from space, it reminds a trapeze with flat top. Its lower layers formed 20 million years ago of sedimentary rock. Under the influence of time and pressure coming from the overlying layers, the oceanic silt turned into chalk, marl, clay and gypsum. The relatively young top layer consists of limestone rich with dense shell impregnations of the Sarmatian Sea. Local shell rock is a valuable construction material. For photographers, Ustjord is undoubtedly a promised land, although it's not really suitable for long-term accommodation. In winter it's cold, and in summer it's hot with no water. The question is why there are so many historical finds on the plateau, which incontestably evidence that once upon a time it was quite crowded here. One of the branches of the Great Silk Way passed here. Cities and caravanserais were built along it. The answer to this question apparently lies in the field of climatology. Earlier local climate was much more humid. We got acquainted with the chinks of western Kazakhstan, but now it's time to go to the east, locate some picturesque rock formations there, take a couple of nice pictures and learn something new about the past of the Kazakhstan's land. We are on the coast of Lake Zaysan, one of the most ancient lakes in the world. It appeared about 60 million years ago as the result of a tectonic break. A segment of crust sunk forming the Zaysan Depression, which geologists call grabens or trough faults. The warm shallow lake was surrounded by the marshy plain covered with damp rainforests. In the middle of the Paleogene age, the continental Jungarian Sea merged with Zaysan and Balkhash. But about 25 million years ago, it dried up and Lake Zaysan returned to its previous coastline. The Kien-Kirish Massif is an ancient rainforest that turned into multicolored clays by time and chemistry. During our time, erosion has opened up the Oligocene horizons to expose the landscape of extraordinary beauty to the delighted nature photographers. Apparently, our ancient ancestors appreciated this beauty also, and that was exactly the reason why they used to set up their sanctuaries in this area.
Когда-то в этих пещерах жили наши далекие предки.
Once upon a time, our distant ancestors used to live in these caves. Scientists from Usk-Kamenogorsk date these settlements to the Paleolithic age, that is 50 to 70,000 years ago, which means that people already lived here before the Cro-Magnon era. Nowadays, Kien-Kirish and Shekelmez have become the sites of pilgrimage by photographers from neighboring and distant countries. Our next destination point is the Atezhak and Aktau uplands. We already know that these rainbow-colored towers are the remains of the ancient seabed that later became subject to erosion. For millions of years, sedimentary rock had been accumulating on the bottom of the Ili Sea. Subsequently, under the pressure of the top layers, sand, pebble, color clays, pieces of granite, remains of seaweed and live organisms were pressed together and cemented in conglomerates of various colors and shades. About 2.5 million years ago, the tectonic plates of the northern Tian Shan crashed into the Kazakhstan plate, causing the rapid growth of the Jungar Ridge. The Ili Sea dried up, and the sedimentary that accumulated on its bottom were brought up by the mighty underground forces. Their influence was not uniform, and thus the layers rose unevenly, at times bending, at times breaking or collapsing, forming faults and caves. We wouldn't want to be in this place during that very interesting but dangerous time. The Katutau mountain massif is located near Aktau. From the ones that we saw earlier, it differs both in origin and strata structure. The Katutau are volcanic mountains, and the road snakes between the dark basalt lava deposits. At the top of the ridge there is the volcano orifice that created quite a stir in these parts about 40 million years ago. Our educational tour is coming to an end. Earlier research expeditions included only professional scientists, but today the pleasure of learning about our complicated, strange and wonderful world is available to everyone. Even though our discoveries in the course of the journey have been known for a long time and were already described in popular literature, for us they are still very much valuable. We have eyewitnessed the testimonies of some grandiose events that had given our planet its current look, thus enhancing our knowledge and appreciation of it.